Hello everybody, my name is Spencer, and today we're going to be going over how to download and export models from Blender to BeamNG. This tutorial will also cover how to add LODs to those models, which are basically a form of level of detail, which will help optimize your model for the game. As for the demo, we're going to use Lake Farso, one of my newer maps. It is currently available on my Patreon if you want to go check it out, so I'll have a link for that in the description and a little card annotation up in the top right now. Also, I'm going to have a link to everything you're going to need, such as WinRAR and Blender down in the description below, so if you don't have those already, go download those. So first off, you're going to want to make your way over to any 3D model platform. My 3D model platform of choice is Sketchfab, so I just would do Sketchfab and I put in building. And I think I'm going to add this one. I've been eyeballing this one for a little bit, so I want to try this one out. A lot of these models also tend to be free, and also you got to make sure if you're on this site, you also have to press downloadable because you got to find ones that are downloadable. Anyway, so if we scroll down here, this is the one I'm going to use for the demo. It's called Warehouse Building. You can follow along with me if you want, or just find a different model. It doesn't really matter. It will all be the same. Obviously, make sure the model looks good for BeamNG, and I think this one does because it has a lot of detail and it is quite nice. So if we go over to this little download 3D model button, we're going to be granted with these formats. So I'd recommend OBJ or FBX. I don't think this one has an FBX, but if there's OBJ or FBX, I'd recommend those because those are just the easiest ones to import. I think GBL works pretty good too. I'm not entirely sure, but I recommend OBJ or FBX. So you're just going to download that, and it's just going to pop down here. And then once that's finished downloading, you're going to want to open the zip file, and we're going to go over to close these tabs out, just so we have the WinRAR file itself. You can also use 7-zip for this, but I normally use WinRAR because it works for me. Anyways, once you're granted with this, you're going to have, normally with Sketchfab at least, you're going to have source and textures. So the textures are obviously in here, and then the source is in here. So I normally just drag the source out to the desktop and the textures into the source file, just so it makes it a little easier to know where they are. All right, so for the next step, we're going to go to Blender. Once Blender's finished loading, you're just going to download this BeamNG export template in the description. I'm going to have it available, obviously. So once you're in this file, you're going to open by going to File, Import, and then you're going to import whatever the file was, FBX or OBJ. For this example, it's OBJ. Actually, wait, hold up. Let me just make sure I get that right. OBJ, yeah, because there's two different versions. I don't know if this matters, but I'm just going to make sure I click this one to make sure it's not the legacy. I don't know if that makes a difference, though. All right, next, we're going to go to Desktop because that's where we saved it. It doesn't, I mean, it depends on where you saved it. If you save it in a different folder, you're just going to have to go find the directory for that. But for this example, I have it in Desktop. So we're going to go over to the source, and then we're going to import the OBJ, and then you're going to have the file in here, and I don't know what that is, but I'm going to remove that. So goodbye. All right, now that we have just the model, let me just add the textures to it to make sure the textures are working. So we're going to go to base color, and then we're going to select this image texture because these models normally have an image texture attached to them. So we're just going to be able to find the right one for this. All right, so I think the right one is this one, I believe. Yep, that's the right one. And then I'm not entirely sure what this wire thing is for. I don't think I did anything, so I can remove that. All right, and as for some optimization, we're going to name the file type Warehouse Building 1, and then we're just going to name this the same thing just to keep it easy. And then you're also going to want to drag this into the collection by holding down Shift and then dropping it into this parent to the start. And I forgot to mention, you're going to definitely need these. These are the things that make the model actually work for BeamNG. So this is the base, and then you have the start, and then this BB auto billboard will help with the lotting. So you're going to want to leave this as this. So if we go to the warehouse building, we can just make sure it's all good. I believe it is. And you can make sure it's obviously optimized. This one actually seems very well optimized. I don't even know. What are the vertices? Let me go add a modifier and check the vertices. So if you just go to add modifier and then go to decimate, it can actually show you how many faces you have. I think there's other ways to do that, but that's the best way I find. All right, this one has about 1,000, which is actually very small, but we're still going to want to optimize the model. So next up, to actually optimize the model, we're going to copy this, and then we're going to delete these because of how that copies it. And then we're going to drag that back into the start 01. Then we're just going to rename this to building 1 underscore, let's do about 250, A250. So it's hard to explain how this works, but it's basically this determines the range of the LOD. So I'm going to actually set this one to A1000. You'll see what I mean. This one, they're like different distances. So this is the main quality of the model. And then this one is the second LOD, if that makes sense. And then this is actually the third LOD. This one acts as just a 2D texture. So this is like the minimum LOD that you can do. So we're going to leave the 1000 one good. And then what we're going to do with the A250 is we're going to go to materials, and we're going to just remove this. And then we're going to add a new material and just call it LOD vert call. And then we're also going to go to modifiers, and then we're going to go to the decimate I was showing you earlier. And we're going to just lower it. Actually, let me just close this out so we can see what it actually looks like. So we're going to lower it, but I want to find the best way of doing this so it doesn't do that because that looks weird. I wonder if that won't work, actually. Maybe I can do this. So if I go to select all the things and then I go to select, sorry, not select, we're going to go to mesh, my bad. We're going to clean up, and then we're going to go to merge by distance. I don't know if this will work. We will see. Yeah, that works a lot better because it's keeping the same shape. So we're just going to set to that because that looks like a good range of model, and then we're also going to just shade the flat so it doesn't look weird when it's far away. So if we compare the two, you can see that's the LOD model, and then that's the normal model. So we can check how many vertices this has. So this is about 300. This one was, I think, 1,000, right? Yeah, this one was 1,000. This one was about 200. It's going to help optimize the model with the amount of vertices. And also, the main thing I want to drive home is the texture. Having a lower texture makes the game run a lot better than it would otherwise. So that's why you want to add LODs to your models, especially for the texture. You can, I mean, for some examples, you don't have to lower the vertices if it's already so low, but I'd recommend always adding this LOD vert col because this will definitely help it. And I'm going to explain this right now, actually. So the reason why I named it LOD vert col is because in the game there's a inbuilt texture that's called a LOD vert col, which is basically a version of just a plain texture, but you can also color it. And I will show you how to do that right now. So if we just close out of that, and then we'll just remove that. So if I go to select the model, and then we go over to edit mode, and then we change that to vertex paint, and then we're also going to want to change this to this filled in shape right here. Let me just close also that to do the transparency. So we're also going to turn on this little button right here. And then you're going to have all these vertices. So this is like you're painting the vertices. This sort of acts as a painting of the vertices, which the game will pick up, and then you can choose the color based off of this. So what we're actually going to want to do before we do any of this, just to, oh, wrong button. We're going to go back to object mode for a second. Let me just make sure what this color is. So this thing is about like a brownish, like what's the average, like taking whatever the average color of this is and then color it that. So the brown, this is about a brown color, I would say. So if we go back to this, we'll go back to vertex paint, and then we'll change the color. So you'll have this little color menu. And if you don't, I think you would just press tab. I forget what the button is, but there's a button to bring it back in because sometimes this goes away. I forget what the button is. Oh, okay, I found it. It's a tool settings right here. So if this gets closed out, you can just press this and then it should come back. All right, so we're just gonna color this to a dark brownish color. So we're gonna set this to like here, and then down. And this takes a little experimenting because you don't know how exactly this is gonna look like in game. So once we get the model in, we're gonna finick around with that. So if you go hold down Shift K, wow, whoopsies, I need to put that back on. There you go, now you can see the actual color. Let me just redo that actually, just so you can see it. So Shift K, and then color that color in the full model. And obviously make sure you have this enabled, because if you don't, it won't color it at all. So you gotta make sure that's enabled. Or this, I think I use this because you can actually see where the vertices are coloring. Also, if you want, if I get out of that, and you don't, so it depends on if you select it or not. So you can actually select a specific amount. So say I go to this right here and I just select this, and then I go back to the vertex paint, it's only gonna paint these ones. So if I change this to like a very blue, it'll paint where these are, which is very helpful when you're trying to do models that have multiple colors, such as actually this one, which I do want to do, I think, because this one has a little grayish top, so I want to do that. Anyways, let me go back to edit mode. So if we go to the top of the model, I'm just gonna select the top faces. So that's the top faces. Let me just remove the other excess ones that it chose. All right, now that I have all my faces chosen for the top, we're just going to go back to vertex paint, and then we're going to paint a dark silverly color, whatever the word is. So yeah, we're just going to paint that in. Let me bring it back to that, sorry. And then, oh wait, I forgot, I didn't remove the blue. I held it. Let me do that real quick. All right, sorry about that. We're just going to go back to remove the saturation, and then we're going to get a silver color, and then we're just going to paint the vertices on the top. There we go. So that's going to look decent from far away, because they're not really going to be able to tell that is a low quality model. I mean, maybe it depends on how far you set the distance to actually do the LOD, and I will get into that when we get to that point. Anyway, so let's get out of that. Let's go back to object mode. So we have the two objects now. So if I bring it back to actually showing the color, you can kind of tell what the difference of the models are. Obviously, this one's actually high quality, and this one's just a LOD. And then this one, as I said, we'll just do a 2D texture, and we don't have to, that will do it automatically, so we don't really have to worry about that. All right, so next step is we're going to actually export the model, because basically this is ready. We just got to make sure it's actually working. So once we get into the model, we'll be able to know. So we're going to go over to File, Export, Cloudifile, which is the file BeamNG takes, or day.day, because that's the file extension. Then we're going to go over to Levels, which is the BeamNG levels directory for your level. And then we're just going to go to this directory, just to make sure you have the directory. It's users, your name, and then app data, local, BeamNG, the update, whatever the update is currently at, and then levels, and then your level. So for this example, I'm using Lake Farso, but in the file I named it Lake Faro, so ignore that. So do whatever the level file of your name is. And if you want to know actually how to make the map, you should either follow my tutorial, or there's some other tutorials online for that, because this video isn't really based on how to make a map. All right, let me just add the art file and then the custom models. You can obviously send this to any directory you want, but I'm doing this for an example, and then we're going to name it warehouse. No, if I could spell building right, that would be good. Building 1. There we go. And then we're just going to export this as warehouse building 1, and then we're just going to export it. Make sure these settings are on. I would remove the copy, because we're going to manually copy that, and then don't leave this one definitely unchecked. This one basically allows you, if you're going to have multiple models in Blender, you can select one of these and then export only the one that was selected, which is very helpful. But for this example, you don't need to do that because there's only one model. So we're just going to export to Collada, and then it should go over to that file. So if we close out of that, and close out of that, we're going to make our way over to the levels where we put our folder. And again, this is just here. It's next to mods. So you're going to have your mod folder in here, and then this is like the extra part of it. So we'll go back to like file, custom models, and the warehouse building, and then your model should be right here. So if we head back into BeamNG, let me go to the world editor. Let me just bring all the files in because I forgot that I have a 2-monitor setup and I'm not recording that. So if I just back out of here, so normally you're just going to be greeted by the intro screen. So go to art, and then the directory of your model, which I set as, let me refresh this. I gotta refresh it just so it shows up. So I put it right here. So we got warehouse building 1. I actually should have put that in buildings, but it's fine. But we're gonna go to the model. So we just drag and drop right here. And oh, that is not working. That is lovely. I will explain why that's not working in a second. Give me a second. It's okay. It's okay. So we're just gonna drag and drop this over here. As you can see, you can kind of see the actual LOD in action. So when you get closer, it will show the high quality, and when you get further away, it won't. But as for the texture, it should actually be right here, right? Yeah, it's right here. All right, I just need to actually get the texture file. So if we open this up, then we're actually gonna go back to the warehouse building. So you get the textures. I don't remember which one. I think all of these are gonna be used. Let me just scroll that up. There you go. So that's all the textures. So we have the specular map, we have the normal map, and then we have the actual color map. We're just gonna rename these to warehouse underscore color map, or base. I like calling it base. And then the same thing, warehouse underscore normal, and doesn't really matter. You can name these however you want. Warehouse underscore specular. And then what we're also gonna do is we're gonna open this up in Paint.net, which I will leave a download link. You can use any, I think any image software for this besides Photoshop. I don't think Photoshop can export this file extension, but this will basically allow it to be the most optimized for the game, because that's this file extension BeamNG loves, which is called DDS. So we're just gonna go to save as, and then we're gonna save it as a DDS file, which is direct draw surface apparently. I don't really follow the names, I just follow the extension. You're gonna wanna make sure BC1 is checked. This basically is for color maps. I think with transparency, I think you can do, I don't remember exactly what the file things. I think this one's for not transparency and this one's with transparency. And then we're also going to enable generate maps, which basically will allow it to earn some, it's just optimization stuff. So you got to definitely make sure that's enabled. And then we're going to press OK, and then we're going to do that for the rest. So let me just do that real quick. Okay, another thing, if you're following along with this model's kind of weird, so just make sure you layer this normal map. I don't know why it's transparent. Normally normal maps are not transparent, so it's a little weird. So I'm just adding a new layer and just like copying it over so it doesn't have transparency. That's weird. I've never seen a normal map have transparency. Anyway, so let me just go back to what I was doing. Save, be that, and that. Flatten, obviously. I'm going to go back to the specular map, and then we're going to do the same thing. Also, wait, I forgot to mention, don't do the normal like this. You're supposed to do, I think, 5 for this. So if I go back to just save this over, and I just choose 5, I think this one is. Yeah, 5. So just make sure you select 5 for this one, because this is 4 normal maps for the game. So make sure it's yellow with the 5. All right, now that we have all our textures, we can go back to BeamNG. So we're going to go back to this texture menu. If you don't have the material editor up, it's just in here, and then material editor right here. So make sure this is up and you have your model selected, because this is the material we chose. And this is named after whatever you name it in Blender. So I'd say I named it Penguin, it would show up as Penguin in here. And also, just another forewarning, when you export your model into this folder with nothing in it, so say there's nothing in it, like there's no main file, it will create a main file when you open up in the game. But if you add another model to this file, it will not create a materials file for that. So you're going to have to go in and manually press file, or not file, sorry. Go to material editor, and then new material, and then you're going to want to make a material, say mat test 1, just doesn't really matter. And then you go to this button, and then you go to custom models, and then not buildings. Say you're adding another model to this file, you're going to want to edit it right here, just so it's in the same place. And then you're just going to want to name it the exact same thing as what you have it named in Blender. So say you have it warehouse building 1, you're going to want to name this warehouse building 1 so it matches up. And the game knows what the directory is, if that makes sense. And then you would just press create, and then you'd have another texture that when you import it won't show up with a no texture symbol. So that's just another tip. Hey, Future Spencer here. Just need to explain some extra things. So mainly this button right here called Pick from TS Aesthetic. So this basically will allow you to add textures to a model if the main materials file is not present, because say it isn't present, the game isn't going to, or not the game, but the level isn't going to pick up that there is materials for it, so it's just going to show up as a no texture. But say something has a no texture, you can always go to here, create a new texture. So say you name it test material, and then you can go to pick from TS aesthetic, and then, oh, why is it not working? Of course it's not going to work when I'm trying to explain it. Let me just try that again, sorry. Okay, well let me just go to that and then try it. There we go. Okay, sometimes it's a little weird, so make sure you have the object selector selected. But you can see what the internal Blender materials I made. Remember when I went to make the materials? So we have Warehouse Building 1 and Plot Vertical. Those are right there. So that will show up with that. And I also explained how this wasn't, I said two things where I said this was important and also this wasn't important. This is important only when you're creating a new material without this. So say you don't have this and you're making a new material, this is important because this is going to be the internal name that this is based off of, if that makes sense. Whereas when you have something like this, it doesn't matter what this name is up here, but it matters what this is. So if you have it mapped to this, you need it to be, you can name this anything, but if you have a separate thing, so say name it test material, I don't know why I just removed that, but test material, it's going to create it with the test material as the mapping. So just be careful of that. They are kind of different, but there's multiple ways of going about it, but that's just an extra thing I need to explain. So let me get back to the video. Anywho, let's upgrade this to PBR because PBR is better. And I think let me just do that. So now we go to the base color map, which is the base right here. And then the texture shows up, which is lovely. And then we're also going to go to the normal map. Normal map will show up here. Normal map's there. And then we're going to go to the roughness map, which is basically a specular map. I don't know why they renamed it, but specular map. And now we have our model in, and look how beautiful it is. It's beautiful. And also the LOD works. I mean, it looks a little weird. I would make it look a little better than that, but you kind of get the idea of what it's meant to do. So we're also just going to save it so it doesn't not save when you exit the game. Also, another tip is you're going to want to select this and then go to visual mesh. So the two collision options you have is collision mesh, and I'm also going to show you how to do that separately right now, actually. The visible mesh is basically the mesh that you're seeing right now. So that if you select visible mesh, it's just going to show the mesh that is being shown. But if you select collision mesh, you can go back to Blender and add that. So say you want the collision mesh. The collision mesh will be whatever you choose it to be. So if say I copy this and I bring this back into here, and then you're going to want to name it collision mesh, or call mesh, sorry, call mesh -1, exactly that file. And then you just remove your materials because materials don't matter for this. So whatever you set this to be will be the collision mesh of that model. So say you want this to be a little wider for some reason, you could, and that would be the collision of it, even though that wouldn't make any sense because the model ends there, but the collision would end right over here. So you would crash into this part, which would technically be invisible because the visible mesh is not showing that part as being a thing. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, I don't know if I'm going to add that because basically when you export it, you're just going to keep this in here and it will be whatever collision mesh you set is going to be that. But I'm not going to add that because I like using visible mesh because it kind of saves on space for the model, because if you add a collision mesh, it's also going to add the vertices for that, which will also increase your model size. So if you just make your visible mesh allowable to be optimized for the collision, it should be okay if you just set it to visible mesh. Anyways, you can also see if you click on the model, you have your two different menus for the texture. So if you go to LOD vert call, which is the one we chose, the reason why this works is because this little button right here is selected, which is vert color. So if I turn that off, it's going to just set the white whatever I assign like the texture to be. So if I said to be red, you can also see in the background how other models in BeamNG use that technique of vert call. So if I just set this back to that, and then I select vert call, it should bring everything back to normal. So just make sure that's checked. It should be, because it just is in the game. As you can see, it's like a thing inbuilt in the game. This is made for like optimization. So also, as you can see, I kind of got the coloring wrong. So we're also going to redo the coloring just to make sure it actually makes sense. So if I go back to the model, we're just going to go back to vertex paint. So we could tell that it was a little more, it was lighter in the real game. So we're just going to make it a little lighter. About that. There we go. We're going to try that, I think. A little saturation. There we go. We're going to try that. So if we export that to Collada again, we're going to overlay that. And I don't know why that didn't go through, actually. Give me a second. All right, sometimes you just need to export it twice because the game doesn't really understand what you're doing. So just make sure that, just do it twice if it doesn't show up. There you go. Yeah, see, that makes more sense for the actual thing. I might make that a tad darker, and then I'll do the top. All right, and then we're just going to remove the saturation, and then about there, I think maybe a little lighter. It's pretty light in the actual game. If I set that to that, and then we're going to just make sure that's open as well, or at least not hidden. And then go to export to the Collada, and then we're just going to export it back. And then now that looks almost right. I just need to make that darker, I guess. All right, I re-export it again. That looks a bit better. Yeah, there you go. So when you're far away, it looks, it looks okay. But when you get closer, it's going to be good. Also, I do want to make this a little bit less further away, because when you get far away, it's kind of not that far away when it changes. So what we're going to also do, so if we go back to Blender, these settings right here, so you see the A_A, this is what sets the range of the LOD. So say I set this to 2000, export to Collada again, and then this will be a lot closer now. As you can see, it's really, really close now, and that doesn't make any sense. So what you're gonna want to do is set this to a pretty low one, I would say maybe 500. And then it's kind of weird how this works. So this one controls the distance between this one, and then this one controls the distance between this one. So if you want this one to show up a little later, we'll just set this to a lower one as well, so it's a little further away. So if we go back to this, export that. Now, as soon as you get farther away, there's that LOD, and then you're gonna have the secondary LOD, which will be the, oh, that's really far away. Let me change that. Maybe about 150, maybe. On average, you kind of have to experiment because it depends on how big your model is, and then you're gonna have to scale this to whatever that is. There you go. So now you can see the 2D texture will come in, and that's a really optimized model. And that's what the trees do actually. You can kind of tell that the trees are just a 2D texture actually because of how the LODs work. But it kind of fades in, and then you get the secondary LOD, and then you get the main LOD. And if say you're editing the model and you want to see what your LOD looks like from like not far away, you can also go to press dynamic, and then let me just scroll this up. You press dynamic, and then you just force detail, and then you set the detail level. You'll be able to tell what detail level. So that's the 2D texture detail. That's the detail we made, and then that's just the normal model. So yeah, and as you can see, the model also has collision. I think I already showed this, but I'm just going to show it again because why not? Bang, it has collision. Great. Yeah, let me just place this in a little bit of a better area. I think right here might be cool just to place it in. Let me remove those trees as well. Also, we're going to want to make sure the models scale like at a right scale because that's way too big. So we're also going to want to lower the size of the model. So if we just select all of these two things and we just, nope, wait, hold up. The vertices, you don't want to have the vertices selected. You're going to want to have the object selected. So if I lower that a little bit, it should actually be the right scale. You kind of have to guess with what it's going to be. About there. Yeah, those barn doors would be about that big. Yeah, that works. Also, when you do resize it, you're going to want to refresh the visible mesh because the game would still think it's the bigger model if you don't refresh that. So you can either just like re-click that, or you can go to that and then re-click it again just to make sure it just refreshes the model real quick so you don't have to worry about the collision not working. But yeah, that's about it for the tutorial. I think I went over everything I needed to go over. If you guys have any questions in the comments, I will be glad to answer them because this is a complicated thing. It's not like something you can learn like that, like super quick. I mean, it's gonna take a little bit to get a grasp of, but once you get it, it's pretty easy. It's kind of hard to explain, so sorry if I didn't really explain everything correctly, or not correctly, but like I tried to explain everything as good as I could. So hopefully I did help, and if I did, please drop a like down below and consider subscribing because I'm gonna do a lot more tutorials like this for BeamNG because I feel like there's not that many tutorials for BeamNG out. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, obviously I said like the video, and go check my Patreon if you want. I have a lot of good maps on there, I think, maybe. But yeah, I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.